Naomi Cabrera spent her first morning at Halmeric Global being asked to refill the coffee urn, twice, by people who never learned her name. She refilled it, said thank you, sat back down, and quietly read a spreadsheet someone had left open across the table. Upside down. In the all-staff meeting, VP of Corporate Giving Grant Ellison gestured at her. And this is our new diversity hire. She's here to make the org chart look good. 22 people laughed. She smiled. She'd already found the number that didn't add up. What none of them knew, before the timid cardigan and the too quiet voice, Naomi spent 9 years tracing dirty money for people with badges. And the charity's rounding errors were not errors. If you've ever been underestimated by someone who should have looked closer, this story is for you. Subscribe and comment the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this one travels. Naomi Cabrera spent her first morning at Halmeric Global being asked to refill the coffee urn, twice, by people who never learned her name. She refilled it. She said thank you. Then she sat back down and read a spreadsheet someone had left open across the table. Upside down. By the end of that first week, in an all-staff meeting, the VP of Corporate Giving gestured at her like a piece of furniture. And this is our new diversity hire, Grant Ellison said. She's here to make the org chart look good. 22 people laughed. Naomi smiled. She had already found the number that didn't add up. Here's what none of them knew. Before Halmeric, before the timid cardigan and the too quiet voice, Naomi had spent 9 years tracing dirty money for people who carried badges. And the charity's rounding errors were not errors. If you've ever been underestimated by someone who should have looked closer, stay with me. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the quiet part, before any of them knew what they were looking at. Asheboro, North Carolina, a suburb that had swallowed a lot of farmland to become a place where corporations put their regional offices. Halmeric Global sat in a glass building off the interstate, 4 stories, a lobby with a fountain that nobody looked at anymore. On a Monday in early spring, Naomi Cabrera walked through that lobby carrying a canvas bag and a paper cup of coffee she'd bought 2 blocks away. She was 41. She wore a gray cardigan and flat shoes. She had a face that people forgot the moment they turned away from it, and she had spent a long time learning to keep it that way. The security guard gave her a visitor sticker because her badge wasn't ready yet. She thanked him. She wore the sticker all day. Nobody noticed. Her desk was on the 3rd floor, in the accounts and compliance pool. It was a low-walled cubicle near the printer, the kind of spot they give the newest person, the one nobody's decided about yet. There was a chair that squeaked, a monitor with a smudge in one corner, a drawer that stuck. Naomi opened that drawer on her first morning and put 3 things inside it: a pen she liked, a packet of tissues, and a small brass coin, heavy for its size, worn smooth on one face. She closed the drawer. She didn't take the coin out again that day, but her hand went to the drawer more than once, just resting on the handle. The way you touch a door frame on your way through a house you used to live in. Her supervisor was a woman named Whitney Dorsey. Whitney was the office manager, and she moved through the floor like weather. She had good posture and expensive glasses, and a way of saying your name that made it sound like a small correction. "You must be Naina," Whitney said, stopping at the cubicle. "Naomi," said. "Right, we're so glad to have you." Whitney was already looking at her phone. "You'll mostly be supporting the team. Data entry, reconciliations, note-taking. Nothing too heavy while you're finding your feet. Okay?" "Okay," Naomi said. "Great. Coffee's usually low by 10, just so you know." And Whitney was gone, off to the next cloud front. Naomi sat. She looked at the smudge on her monitor. She did not fix it. That was the thing about Naomi that nobody at Halmeric would understand for a long time. She could sit very still and see everything. It was the most useful skill she had ever developed, and she had developed it in rooms where sitting still and seeing everything was the difference between closing a case and watching a man walk. She'd left those rooms on purpose. She wanted them to be over. She had told herself, driving down to Ashboro with everything she owned in the back of a hatchback, that she wanted small, quiet, a job where the worst thing that happened was a coffee urn ran dry. She got the job. She got the coffee urn. The first week went the way first weeks go. She learned where the bathrooms were. She learned that the man in the corner office kept his blinds closed. She learned that the woman 2 cubicles over cried on Wednesdays, and that everyone had agreed, silently, not to mention it. She learned her coworkers by their sounds before their names. The one who cleared his throat. The one who took loud personal calls. The nervous one. The nervous one was Theo Park. Theo was maybe 26, a junior analyst, and he lived in a state of low-grade panic that never quite resolved. He apologized when other people bumped into him. He double-checked things he'd already checked. On Naomi's third day, he knocked over a coffee at the shared printer and stood there watching it spread toward a stack of paper like it was the end of the world. Naomi handed him a wad of her tissues before he could speak. "Oh," he said. "Thank you. God, thank you." He mopped. "I'm so sorry, I'm Theo. I don't think we—" Naomi, right? He looked at her like he was memorizing it, which in that office made him remarkable. "You're new. I'm new. It gets better," he said, and then he glanced around and lowered his voice, as if he'd said something dangerous. "It doesn't, really, but it gets familiar." She almost liked him for that. Her actual work that first week was exactly as small as promised. She reconciled. She entered data. On Thursday, Whitney dropped a petty cash log on her desk with a sticky note that said, "Just make it match," and Naomi spent an hour with it. It didn't match. There was a $40 gap. $40 across a quarter in a company that moved millions. Nobody would ever care about $40. Naomi cared, not because of the money, because of the shape. She went through it by hand, line by line, the way she'd been taught. And she found it. A receipt entered twice, once as a positive, and once, 3 weeks later, as a reversal that had been keyed wrong. $40. A typo. Nothing more. She fixed it, noted the correction, and set the log aside. But her hand had gone to the drawer while she worked. To the handle. To the coin inside it. Because $40 entered twice, 3 weeks apart, is a typo. And it is also the exact same shape as something that is not a typo at all. And a person who has spent 9 years staring at that shape does not stop seeing it just because she has decided to. She ate lunch alone that week. A sandwich at her desk or outside on a bench near the parking lot when the weather was good. She wasn't lonely, exactly. She had wanted quiet. And quiet is what you get when nobody talks to you. You don't always get to choose which kind of quiet. On Friday, the shape found her again, and this time it came in Theo's shaking voice. He appeared at her cubicle near the end of the day, holding a coffee he wasn't drinking, using it as a prop, something to do with his hands. Can I ask you something? Accounting something? Sure." He crouched down so their voices stayed low. "The foundation," he said. "Our foundation. Bright Futures. I do some of the reporting support for it, the grant summaries. And the quarterly totals, he stopped. Started again. They always come out to these weird round numbers, like exactly round, every quarter. And I mentioned it to my manager once and he said that's just how it nets out, but money doesn't net out like that, not naturally. It's like he searched for it. It's like someone's cleaning it up, making it look tidy." Naomi went still. It was 1 second, less than 1 second. But it was a different kind of still than the still she wore all day. It was the stillness of a person who has just heard a word in a foreign country that she happens to speak. Then it passed. She let her face go soft and a little confused. The face they expected from her. "Huh," she said. "That's strange. Right? I wouldn't worry about it," she said. "Big organizations, there's always rounding somewhere. You should go home. It's Friday." Theo looked relieved to be told to go home. People like being given permission. Yeah, he said. Yeah, you're right. Have a good weekend, Naomi. You too, Theo, he left. She sat there for a while after he'd gone, cleaning it up, making it look tidy. There was a word for what he was describing, and it wasn't a word he knew. The word was structuring, and another word sat right behind it. Patient, the way it always did. Layering, Naomi drove home that night with the radio off. Her apartment was small and mostly empty, boxes she still hadn't unpacked, because unpacking felt like a promise she wasn't ready to make. She sat on the floor with her back against the couch and told herself, out loud, not your job, not your problem. You came here to stop. She believed it for about an hour. Then she opened her laptop and pulled the public filings for the Bright Futures Foundation. Anyone could get them. Nonprofits file, and the filings are public, and you don't need a badge to read them, you just need to know how. She knew how, and she saw it. Not all of it. Not yet, but the shape of it, the outline in the dark, the thing you can't unsee once you've seen it. She closed the laptop. She turned the coin over in her fingers in the dark. Once, twice, the smooth face and the raised face, back and forth, and she did not sleep well. The second week, the office decided what Naomi was. That's what offices do to a quiet person. They fill in the blank for you, and once it's filled in, it's very hard to erase. They decided she was furniture that could type. Whitney started assigning her to meetings, not to participate, to take notes. Naomi would sit in a corner with her laptop while people who made 4 times her salary talked in circles, and she would type what they said, and at the end, Whitney would say, Naomi, you'll circulate the notes? And Naomi would say yes. She was good at it. That was the trap. She was very good at it, because taking accurate notes on what people say while watching what they mean is, again, a thing she had done professionally, in rooms with recording equipment and lawyers. So her notes were perfect. Clean, complete, quietly organized in a way that made the meetings look more coherent than they'd been. Which only confirmed it. She's good at the small thing. Keep her on the small thing. In one of those meetings, a budget review, a man was presenting projections and got tangled in his own numbers. He said a figure, then a different figure. The room let it slide. Naomi, from the corner, without looking up, said quietly, I think the first number was right. The second one double counts the Q2 carryover. Silence. A few people turned. The man checked. She was right. Oh, he said. Yeah, thanks. Whitney smiled a thin smile. Naomi's very thorough, she said, in the tone you'd use about a helpful child. Let's keep moving. And that was that. A person had just watched Naomi do something none of them could do, and the lesson she took from it was that Naomi was thorough. It didn't occur to Whitney to ask how Naomi had caught it. It didn't occur to anyone. Naomi went back to her notes. But that night she went home and pulled more filings. She was doing it now. She'd stopped pretending she wasn't. She worked at her kitchen table with the lamp on, the way she used to work, and the shape got clearer every hour. There was a vendor. It appeared over and over in the Foundation's grant records. Meridian Community Partners. The invoices were for program services, which is a phrase that means anything and therefore means nothing. And the amounts were the tell. They were always just under the thresholds that make a bank or a regulator take a second look. 9,000 something. 8,000 something. Never over. Never the round number that trips the wire. Payments broken into pieces small enough to walk past the guard. She had seen it 100 times. She had built cases on it. A person doesn't keep their transactions just under the reporting line by accident. You only do that if you know where the line is. And you only care where the line is if you're trying not to be seen crossing it. She rolled the coin across her knuckles, over and over, the way she did when the picture was coming together and she didn't like it. Whoever set up Meridian knew the rules cold. This wasn't sloppiness. This was a professional. Somebody inside Halmeric, close to that foundation, was very good at moving money in a way that was designed to look like charity. She thought about Grant Ellison. She had only really seen him once by then, striding through the floor with two people trailing him, talking loudly about a government contract, a big one, the kind that changes a company's whole year. He ran the foundation. Corporate giving was his kingdom. He had the smile of a man who had never once been told no and had stopped expecting to hear it. She didn't have him yet. She had a vendor and a pattern and a bad feeling. That's not a case. She knew the difference better than anyone in that building, so she kept her head down and kept looking. And the office, meanwhile, kept teaching her exactly what it thought she was worth. The name thing never got fixed. Nina, Naomi, once, gloriously, Noreen. She corrected it the first week and then stopped, because correcting it made people uncomfortable, and being corrected by furniture made them more uncomfortable, and she had decided for now that discomfort was a resource she didn't want to spend. There was a strategy in that. There is a kind of person who lets you keep being wrong about them because the wrongness is useful. Naomi was that kind of person. She had just forgotten, for a little while, that she was. "Take notes, sweetie," Grant said to her once, in a hallway, not even breaking stride, handing her nothing, meaning nothing. The word sweetie, landing, and vanishing. He didn't know her name. He would never, at that point, have believed she had one that mattered. Theo saw it happen. He winced for her. "He's like that with everyone," Theo said afterward, apologizing on behalf of a man who would never apologize for himself. "It's not personal." "I know," Naomi said. And she did know. That was the thing. It genuinely wasn't personal. Grant Ellison didn't dislike her. He didn't think about her enough to dislike her. She was a blank space in the shape of a person, and he walked through blank spaces all day. She almost felt something like pity watching him. He was so sure. He had built his whole life on being the smartest man in every room, and he had never once considered that the rooms might be lying to him about who was in them. The offenses stacked. A meeting she'd prepped, where her name wasn't on the material she'd made. A lunch order taken from the whole team where she was skipped, not out of malice, just because nobody's eyes had landed on her long enough to ask. A moment where Whitney, frustrated about something else entirely, said, "Can someone competent handle this?" while standing next to Naomi, which meant in the arithmetic of the office that Naomi was not someone. She swallowed all of it. She had swallowed worse in her old life, from worse people with more at stake. This was nothing. This was almost restful in a bitter way. Nobody here was going to hurt her. They were just going to overlook her. And she had come to Ashboro, hoping to be overlooked. But something was changing in her. Quietly, week by week. The overlooking was starting to feel less like peace and more like a hand pressing down on the top of her head. And then came the all-staff meeting. And the hand pressed all the way down. It was a celebration, technically. Halmeric had won an award for corporate philanthropy, a plaque from some regional business council, and the whole company gathered in the big conference room on the 4th floor to hear about it. There was sheet cake. There were folding chairs. There was a small stage with a lectern. Grant Ellison ran the show, because of course he did. The foundation was his, and the award was the foundation's, and therefore the award was his. And he stood at that lectern glowing like a man accepting a crown he'd designed himself. He talked about giving back. He talked about community. He talked about the values that made Halmeric more than a company. He was good at it. That was the awful part. He was genuinely good at standing in front of people and making generosity sound like his personal invention. Naomi stood near the back, against the wall, holding a paper plate she wasn't eating from. And then Grant, warm and expansive, riding the good feeling in the room, decided to be inclusive. "You know," he said, "part of what makes this work is who we bring in. The fresh faces, the new energy." His eyes swept the room and, by pure bad luck, or maybe by the gravity that pulls a cruel man toward the softest target, they found Naomi. "We've got some great new additions. Like, over there, he gestured. Heads turned. Our new diversity hire. She's here to make the org chart look good. It took a half second to land, and then the room laughed. Not everyone, but enough. 22 people, give or take, a warm ripple of laughter. The easy laughter of people who are relieved the joke isn't about them. Whitney laughed. Naomi saw her do it, one hand coming up to her collarbone, the little social laugh of a woman agreeing with power. Grant smiled, pleased, and moved on. He'd already forgotten he'd said it. To him it was nothing, a bit of warmth, a little joke to bring the room together. Naomi stood against the wall and smiled. That was what they all saw, the few who bothered to look. A small woman in a gray cardigan, smiling, taking it well. Good sport, no trouble. What they did not see was her hands. Her right hand had gone into the pocket of her cardigan, and inside that pocket her fingers had closed around the brass coin, which she had carried up from her desk that morning without quite knowing why, and they held it, not turning it, not rolling it, holding it, dead still, the way you hold on to something so you don't do something else. She smiled at Grant Ellison, and she thought, very clearly, one sentence. They think I count the coffee cups. And then, underneath it, quieter, the sentence she had come to Ashboro specifically to never think again. I know exactly what he is. And I can prove it. She put the coin back in her pocket. She put her paper plate in the trash on the way out. She said great meeting to a person who didn't answer. And she went back down to the third floor and sat at her desk with the smudged monitor and the sticking drawer, and she did not open the foundation files that afternoon, because she was still trying not to. That was the honest truth. Even then, even with the laughter still in the room upstairs, part of her was trying to let it go. She had left the bureau for a reason. She never said the reason out loud, not even to herself, not all of it. But it lived in her like a scar you can find in the dark. There had been a case. There had been a year of her life poured into a trail of dirty money, and at the end of it there had been a decision made by people above her, and the money had gone one way, and justice had gone another. And Naomi had sat in her car in a parking garage and understood that she could not do it anymore. Not because she'd failed, because she'd succeeded, completely, and it hadn't mattered. So, she'd stopped, she'd come south. She'd bought a cardigan and taken a small job, and decided that being invisible was a kind of rest. And now here was the whole thing again. The vendor. The splits. The professional hiding money inside a charity. And a man at a lectern calling her a checkbox, while the crime he was running sat in a file on her kitchen table. She could walk away. She kept telling herself she could walk away. Theo took the decision out of her hands. Or maybe he made it possible. It's hard to say. After which, he came to her 2 days later, and he was worse than she'd ever seen him. Pale, his hands actually shaking, not the nervous flutter, real shaking. He waited until the floor was mostly empty, until it was just the after-hours hum of the printers and the cleaning cart somewhere down the hall. I need to show you something, he said, and I need you to tell me I'm crazy. Please just tell me I'm crazy. He put a printout on her desk. It was a grant record. A single grant, a sizable one, $40-some thousand, issued from the foundation to a community program. And then, dated the same day, a second line. The grant returned. And then, dated the same day again, reissued. To Meridian Community Partners. Out, back and out again, all in 24 hours. The same money, touched 3 times, ending up somewhere different than it started. That doesn't make sense, Theo whispered. Why would you return a grant and reissue it the same day to a different vendor? Who does that? I keep thinking I'm reading it wrong. Tell me I'm reading it wrong. Naomi looked at the page for a long time. She wasn't reading it wrong. And neither was Theo. What Theo had found, without knowing what it was a layering step, a way to put a break in the chain so that if anyone ever followed the money, the trail would go cold right there, at the return, at the reissue, at the moment the money changed its name and its reason for existing. It was, honestly, elegant. Grant was good. She'd give him that. He was very, very good at this. But so was she. And that was the thing he had no way of knowing. She should have told Theo he was crazy. It would have been kinder. She could have sent him home, buried the page, kept her head down, finished out her quiet little life in her quiet little cubicle, and let the money go the way the money always went. Instead, she heard herself say, "You're not crazy, Theo." He sat down hard in the squeaky chair. "Oh no," he said. "Oh no. What is it?" "What am I looking at?" "I don't know yet," she lied, gently, because he wasn't ready for the truth and neither quite was she. "But I'll look. Okay? You did the right thing bringing this to me. Now I need you to do the hard thing. I need you to act completely normal. Can you do that?" He nodded like a man agreeing to hold his breath underwater. "Go home," she said. "Don't tell anyone. Don't look at it again. Let me carry it for a while." He went home. He always did what she told him. It was one of the few restful things about him. And Naomi Cabrera sat alone on the third floor, in the low hum, and made her decision. It wasn't loud. There was no music to it, no line said out loud, no fist on the desk. She simply opened a clean, blank spreadsheet, the way she used to at the start of a case, and she looked at the empty grid for a moment, the way you look at a road you swore you'd never drive again. Then she started mapping the hops. She worked for a little over 20 minutes. That's all it took. 20 minutes to reconstruct a chain that the company's outside auditors had rolled past for a full year without a flicker. Out of the foundation. Through the return. Into Meridian. Split into pieces under the threshold. Reassembled, sent onward. She built it in front of her own eyes and felt the old cold clarity come back, the thing she'd been running from, the thing that had never actually left. It just fit her, this work. It fit her the way the coin fit her hand. When she leaned back, the picture was on the screen. Small, partial, but real, and unmistakable to anyone who knew how to read it. The next morning, Theo found her at her desk before anyone else was in, and she showed him a piece of it, just enough. The trace laid out clean across the cells. He stared at it. He looked at her. He looked back at the screen. "How did you do that?" He breathed. "How did you, the auditors? They had this for a year, and you just... How did you do that?" Naomi looked at the coin sitting on her desk, out of the drawer now, catching the early light. She almost told him. The whole thing rose up in her, 9 years of it, ready to come out. Instead, she reached over and turned the monitor off. The trace vanished into black glass. "I need to ask for something," she said quietly, more to herself than to him. "Through the proper channels. Something boring. Something a junior compliance assistant is completely entitled to ask for." "What?" Theo said. "Ask for what?" She was already reaching for the request form. Her hand was steady now, steadier than it had been in a year. "The raw numbers," she said. "The bank-level detail. For reconciliation." She didn't smile when she said it. She knew exactly what she was doing, and it was not the kind of thing you smile about. She was about to walk, in a plain gray cardigan, straight through a door that Grant Ellison thought only he had the key to. And the terrible, beautiful part, the part that made her hand steady, was this. He was going to hand her the key himself, and he was going to think it was nothing. The request went in on a Monday in early spring. 2 lines on a standard form. Bank-level reconciliation detail for the Bright Futures Foundation, for the purpose of routine account reconciliation. She signed it in her small, careful hand. Naomi Cabrera, Junior Compliance Assistant. She walked it to the internal mail tray herself. Then she went back to her desk and reconciled a stack of vendor invoices that had nothing to do with anything, because a junior compliance assistant would. It took 3 days for it to reach Grant Ellison's ears. She knew the moment it did, not because anyone told her. Because Whitney Dorsey came around the partition at 4 in the afternoon, with a face arranged into something that was trying to be kind and landing on something else. "Naina," Whitney said. "Can I borrow you for a second?" "It's Naomi." Sure, Whitney didn't hear it. She never did. So, there's been a little flag. On a records request. Something about the foundation? Naomi looked up at her, kept her face soft, kept her voice smaller than it needed to be. "The reconciliation detail. Yes, I put that in." "Right, so Whitney lowered herself onto the edge of the desk, like she was doing Naomi a favor by sitting. "Here's the thing, sweetie. The foundation's Grant's baby. It's got its own reporting, its own auditors. It's a whole separate world, and honestly, it's a little above where we are. You know?" Naomi said nothing, "So I'm going to have you pull that request," Whitney went on. "Okay? It's not our lane. We stay in our lane, everybody's happy. Grant's very particular about his numbers." "I'm sure he is," Naomi said. Whitney smiled, relieved, hearing agreement where there wasn't any. "Great, so you'll pull it. I'll take care of it," Naomi said. And Whitney went away pleased, because that was the kind of sentence you could tell yourself meant yes. Naomi turned back to her monitor. She did not pull the request. She had already gotten what she needed from it. The request wasn't the trap. The request was the knock on the door. She only needed Grant to hear it. She only needed him to be the kind of man who couldn't leave a knock unanswered. He was exactly that kind of man. The raw detail came through her access 2 mornings later, routed automatically, before anyone thought to stop it, because the system didn't know that a junior assistant wasn't supposed to be dangerous. Line item deposits, timestamps, originating accounts. The bones under the skin she'd already read in the public filings. She opened a clean spreadsheet. And she began. She did it the old way, the way her hands remembered. Meridian Community Partners, invoiced for program services. Payments that came in just under the line every time. Never one large number. Always 2 or 3 smaller ones, days apart, each one a hair below the threshold that would have made a bank fill out a form. That wasn't sloppiness. Sloppiness is random. This was disciplined. This was somebody who knew exactly where the line was and stayed a careful half-step under it every single time for 18 months. She traced the hops. Money into Meridian. Meridian paying out to a consultancy with a bland name and a registered address that was a mail drop in a state that asked no questions. And that consultancy, she sat very still when she found it. That consultancy had a relationship with the exact overseas entity tied to the government contract Halmeric was bidding on. The one Harlan Voss wanted so badly. The money went out the charity's front door dressed as good works, and came in the contract's back door dressed as consulting. $2.4 million. Over 18 months. Washed clean through a foundation that fed hungry kids. Naomi leaned back. Her chest hurt in the old familiar place. Down the hall she heard Grant Ellison laughing at something with the easy loudness of a man who had never once been afraid in this building. She reached into her cardigan pocket and turned the coin over in her fingers. Once, twice, brass gone warm from her hand. Theo found her at lunch. He didn't sit. He crouched by her chair the way you crouch by something you don't want to spook. "You used a word," he said quietly, "in the hall yesterday. To Whitney. You said layering." "Did I?" "And you said something about FinCEN and thresholds." He swallowed. "I looked it up. Layering, it's a stage. In money laundering. Placement, layering, integration. That's not, Naomi, that's not an accounts word. Nobody in accounts says that." She looked at him. The kid was pale. He had figured out that he was standing next to something with weight, and he didn't yet know if it would crush him. Theo, she said gently. You did a good thing bringing me that grant record. I saw the coin, he said, all in a rush, like he had to get it out before his nerve failed. On your desk, before you put it away. I looked at it. It's not a paperweight. There's an eagle on it. And letters. It's a task force coin. It's a federal, keep your voice down. He stopped. He crouched there, breathing. Can you act normal? She asked him. No, he said honestly. She almost laughed. Try, just for a few more days. Whatever you saw, you didn't see it. Whatever you know, you don't know it. Can you do that? He nodded, terrified and loyal all at once. Are you going to? Is something going to happen? Yes, Naomi said. Something's going to happen. And when it does, you keep your head down and you let it happen to me, not to you. Understand? He understood. He went back to his desk, and he was so obviously not normal that it was almost funny, but nobody was watching Theo Park, because nobody had ever bothered to watch anyone at the bottom of this building, and that was the whole problem with people like Grant Ellison. They only ever watched the top. Grant made his move on a Thursday. He called it a governance review, an emergency one. He framed it as a courtesy, a chance for the new assistant to explain an unauthorized pull of sensitive foundation data before it became a real problem. He invited Harlan Voss. He invited Whitney. He invited 2 board members and the head of HR. He set it in the big glass conference room on the 4th floor, the one with the long table. And he arranged it so that Naomi would walk in and stand at the foot of that table like a defendant. He wanted an audience. He wanted her small and stammering. And gone by Friday. He got the audience. Naomi came up from the 3rd floor in her gray cardigan with a plain manila folder under her arm. She was not stammering. She sat down when no one offered her a chair, in the seat at the very end, and she set the folder in front of her and folded her hands on top of it and waited. Grant stood at the head of the table where the light was good. Thank you all for making time, he said warmly. I want to keep this brief and human. We've had a bit of an overreach. Our newest compliance hire pulled protected banking records tied to my foundation. Without authorization. Without understanding, I think, what she was looking at. He gave Naomi a smile that didn't reach anything. Which is understandable. It's a lot. It's complex work. So rather than make this a formal matter, I thought we'd just clear the air. Naomi, would you like to explain what you thought you were doing? He sat down. He was so sure. You could see it in the way he sat. He'd already won this in his head. He was watching the door for her exit. Naomi opened the folder. I'd be glad to explain, she said. Her voice in that room was not small. It had never actually been small. It had only been quiet. There is a difference. And the room was about to learn it. She took out the first page and slid it toward the middle of the table. This is the Bright Futures Foundation's payment history to a single vendor. Meridian Community Partners. Over the last 18 months. She let them look. You'll notice the amounts. They're strange. They're never round in the way a real invoice is round. They're round in a different way. Every payment lands just under $10,000, 9,000 something, 8,000 something, never over. When the foundation owed Meridian a larger sum, it wasn't paid as one number. It was split. 2 payments, sometimes 3, days apart, each one under the line. Naomi, Grant said, still smiling. Vendors get paid in installments all the time. They do, she agreed. When the installments follow the work. These don't follow the work. They follow the threshold. She slid the second page across. That number, $10,000, is the point at which a financial institution is required to file a report, structuring a payment to stay under it, deliberately, so no report is triggered, is a federal crime on its own. Before you even ask where the money's going. The smile on Grant's face was still there. It had just stopped moving. Here's where it goes, Naomi said, and slid the third page. She walked them through it one page at a time, not fast, She didn't need fast. She showed them the grant that had been paid out, returned within the same day, and reissued through Meridian, money that touched the foundation just long enough to change its name. That's called layering, she said. You break the trail into so many small, honest-looking steps that no single step looks like anything. The auditors had this for a full year, and it looked like nothing to them, because they were reading it one page at a time. You have to read it all at once. You have to know the shape. She laid the outbound path last. Meridian to the consultancy to the offshore entity, and the offshore entity's fingerprints on the government contract Halmeric was, at that very moment, trying to win. $2.4 million, Naomi said. Moved out of a children's foundation over 18 months, washed through a shell vendor, and delivered to the same overseas party that stands on the other side of the contract this company is bidding on right now. She squared the pages. The foundation didn't lose that money, Grant. You didn't misplace it. You washed it. And I can show the board every hop. The room was so quiet she could hear the building's air handlers. Because, Naomi said, and here her voice dropped, not in fear but in weight, I used to do exactly this. For the government. Grant Ellison's mouth opened, and nothing came out. Harlan Voss spoke first. He was leaning forward now, the hands-off ease gone out of him. Who are you? Naomi closed the folder. My name is Naomi Cabrera. For 9 years, I was a federal financial crimes investigator, anti-money laundering task force. I traced schemes like this one for a living. Structuring, layering, shell vendors, offshore integration. I built cases on all of it, and I watched them go to trial. She said it flatly, the way you'd read a Ursum you were tired of. I left the bureau a little over a year ago. I was burned out. I wanted a quiet job where I counted small, honest numbers and went home. I applied here as a junior assistant because I meant it. She looked down the table at Grant. And then someone left a spreadsheet open across the table on my first morning, and it was upside down to me, and I read it anyway. Because I can't not. She looked back at Harlan. Your diversity hire, she said, spent 9 years doing the one thing your VP of corporate giving prayed no one in this building could do. Nobody laughed. 22 people had laughed at her once. There were fewer people in this room, but they were the ones who mattered. And not one of them was laughing now. For one full second, it held, the clean, total silence of a lie collapsing. Then Grant Ellison got up out of his chair. Because men like Grant do not fall in silence. They claw. He was smiling again, but it was a terrible smile now, stretched wrong. This is extraordinary. This is a disgruntled ex-agent. She washed out of her own agency, burned out, she just told you. She said it herself. And now she's playing detective in a compliance temp job. These records are misread, cherry-picked. You take any nonprofit's payments, and you can draw a scary picture if you leave out the context. He turned to the head of HR. This is defamation against an officer of this company. I want her walked out of the building. Today, now, and for a moment, a real, cold moment. It worked. Because that is how it usually works. A VP with a suit and a title and 9 years of goodwill against a quiet woman in a cardigan with a folder. Whitney Dorsey rose halfway out of her seat, pale, looking between the two of them, and her instinct, her poor, order-loving, leadership-pleasing instinct, moved her toward Naomi, toward the door, to escort her out, to make the disruption go away. Naomi, Whitney said faintly. Maybe we should step outside. Sit down, Whitney, Naomi said. Not cruel, just certain. You're going to want to see this part. She took out her phone, she set it on the table, and she made one call, on speaker, in front of all of them. It rang twice. Ruiz, Delia, it's Naomi Cabrera. A pause on the line, then a warmth that filled the glass room. Cabrera, my God. I thought you fell off the earth. I need you to confirm something. On the record, for people in a room with me. Naomi's eyes did not leave Grant. Meridian Community Partners. Is that name known to the Bureau? The line went careful. Professional. Where are you calling from? Halmeric Global. Ashboro, I'm sitting with their CEO and their head of HR. Then I'll tell you what's public enough to tell you, Agent Delia Ruiz said. Meridian Community Partners is a flagged entity in an open federal inquiry. It's been a name of interest for months. The problem we've had is the trail. It's structured to death. We could see the entity, but we couldn't close the loop from the outside. A beat. Why do you have this number in front of these people, Naomi? Because I closed the loop, Naomi said. From the inside. By accident. I've got the full chain, Delia. Foundation to Meridian, to the consultancy, to the offshore party. Every hop. The silence on the phone was a different kind than the silence in the room. It was the silence of someone sitting up straight. Don't let anyone touch those records, Ruiz said. Don't let anyone near a shredder. I'm 40 minutes out. Keep the folder. Naomi ended the call. She looked up. And the whole shape of the room had changed. Because a VP's word against an assistant's is one thing. A VP's word against a still-serving federal agent confirming an open inquiry with an independent paper trail sitting on the table, that is a different thing entirely. That is a thing with authority above Grant Ellison's, and the room could feel it settle over them like weather. Harlan Voss turned very slowly toward Grant. Grant's mouth worked. Harlan, this is... You cannot possibly take the word of sit down, Grant, Harlan said. And Grant Ellison sat down. They came at 11 the next morning. The office that had fetched Naomi coffee, the office that had mangled her name and taken her notes and never once looked closer, watched 3 people walk in through the glass doors. A woman in front, dark suit, badge on her belt, 2 agents behind her. Agent Delia Ruiz did not go to reception smiling. She went to the desk and she said one sentence that traveled across that open floor like a dropped glass. I'm here for Grant Ellison. You could have heard a pin drop on carpet. Up on the 4th floor, in the glass room, Grant tried the smile one last time. He'd had all night to build it, and it came out thin as paper. This is a misunderstanding, he said. To no one, to the room, to the agents in the doorway. This is a misunderstanding, I can. If everyone would just let me walk through the actual context, no one answered him. That was the thing that broke him, in the end. Not shouting. Not handcuffs. The simple fact that he said this is a misunderstanding, and the entire room, the CEO, the board, the HR head, the office manager, the agents, every one of them just looked at him, and no single voice rose to agree. He had spent his whole career inside the sound of people agreeing with him. The absence of it was the loudest thing he had ever heard. Harlan Voss stood. In front of the board, in front of Ruiz, and he did something Naomi had not expected. He walked the length of the long table to the seat at the very foot where she'd placed herself, and he pulled the chair out at the head of the table, and he looked at her. Would you sit up here, please, he said, and tell me what happens next. Not him. You. His face was doing something quiet and total. It was shame. The decent, hands-off shame of a man realizing he had trusted the polished voice and the good suit for years, and never once turned his head toward the woman at the bottom who could actually read. He didn't make a speech about it. Decent men don't. He just pulled out the chair. Naomi moved to the head of the table. She sat. She set the folder down where the light was good. Whitney Dorsey stood in the doorway. She who had said, "Stay in your lane, sweetie." She who had risen to walk Naomi out of the building an hour before it turned. She stood there now with her arms wrapped around herself and her polish all gone. And her face was the office's face. Every person who had ever mistaken quiet for empty was wearing that exact expression. And Whitney wore it for all of them. Naomi did not humiliate her. There was no need. She simply held out the folder. These need to go to the board members and to Agent Ruiz, Naomi said. Copies for each. Can you distribute them, please? Whitney came and took the folder in both hands like it might burn her. Naomi looked at her, and there was nothing cruel left in her at all. Only one dry line delivered soft. "You can take the notes." Whitney's throat moved. She nodded. She took the notes. And Ruiz, watching from the doorway, asked the room a question. Who pulled the original thread on this? Before Miss Cabrera, somebody inside noticed something was wrong long before the records request. Who was it? Naomi answered before anyone could shrug it away. "Theo Park," she said clearly. "Junior analyst, 3rd floor. He saw the round numbers were wrong months ago. He saw the grant that was returned and reissued. He brought it to me because he was the only person in this building brave enough to say out loud that something didn't add up." She looked around the table until she found Harlan's eyes. "He saw it before I did. I just knew the name for what he found." Down on the 3rd floor, someone went and got Theo Park, and when they told him the CEO wanted to thank him personally, the terrified junior analyst, who no one had ever believed, had to sit down for a second before he could stand up again. They walked Grant Ellison out at 11:30. Not in cuffs, that would come later, at a different address in a smaller room. But they walked him out, an agent at each shoulder, down through the building, out across the open floor. And the path to the doors went right past the little kitchen alcove, past the coffee urn, the one Naomi had been asked to refill twice on her first morning by people who never learned her name. 22 people had laughed at her in an all-staff meeting. They were not laughing now. They stood at their desks and they watched the VP of corporate giving carried past the coffee urn on his way out of the only world he'd ever felt safe in. And every one of them understood, in the same terrible instant, exactly who they had been laughing at. Naomi did not watch him go. She was up on the 4th floor, at the head of a long table, explaining to a federal agent and a chastened CEO how the money moved. She had never much cared about the walk of shame. She'd seen 100 of them. They all looked the same. What she cared about was the trail, and the trail was clean, and it would hold up, and that was enough. That was always all she'd wanted, for the true thing to hold up. 6 months later, the light comes in low across Ashboro in the late afternoon, gold on the 3rd floor windows, and Naomi Cabrera has a corner office she never asked for. She didn't want it. Harlan gave it to her anyway, along with a title with the word director in it, and she took it because saying no became more trouble than saying yes. The office is small and quiet, and it faces east, and on the windowsill, catching the afternoon light, sits a brass coin with an eagle on it. She doesn't turn it over so much anymore. It just sits there. Some mornings she picks it up out of habit and finds her hand is steady and puts it back down. She still refills the coffee urn. This surprises people. A director filling the urn. But she likes the walk, and she likes the few quiet minutes, and she likes that the machine doesn't want anything from her. The difference now is small, and it is everything. When she says good morning, people say it back with her name. Her actual name. They learned it the first time. After. Grant Ellison got one line in the paper and then a longer story in a different section. The offshore consultancy that took the charity's money is a court exhibit now, marked and numbered and sitting in an evidence room. The org chart he wanted so badly to climb, the one he thought the diversity hire was there to decorate, turned into a different kind of chart, a cell block roster. He is on it. Whitney Dorsey still works there. She kept her job. She wasn't part of it, only blind to it, and being blind isn't a crime. One afternoon, she knocked on the frame of Naomi's new door and stood there a moment, and then asked, quietly, without a single sweetie in it, "How did you see it?" When none of us could. And Naomi, who could have said any number of things, told her the truth. That she read it all at once instead of one page at a time. That the trick isn't being smart. The trick is being willing to look at the person everyone else has decided not to look at, and take them seriously, and that Whitney could learn to do that any day she chose to start. Whitney listened. Actually listened. Wrote nothing down, for once, just listened. It was a start. Agent Delia Ruiz came by near the end of that first month, when the paperwork settled, and they got coffee from the urn Naomi still refills, and they sat by the east window. "You could come back," Ruiz said. "Officially, they'd take you in a heartbeat after this." "I know. So why won't you?" And Naomi told her the thing she'd never told anyone, the thing that had been an open door in her chest for over a year. The case that broke her, at the end. The one where the numbers stopped being numbers and started being a family, and she had watched it all wash through accounts just like these. And something in her had come loose from looking too long at how easily the world turns suffering into a rounding error. She'd left because she needed to remember that money was just money, that people were just people, that she was a person and not only a pair of eyes that could see through paper. "And did you?" Ruiz asked. Remember, Naomi looked at the coin on the sill, warm in the low gold light. "Yeah," she said. "I did. I had to lose the badge to find it, but I did." She's helping with the inquiry now, on her terms. A few hours, the right documents, her name on nothing she doesn't choose. She goes home at 5. She sleeps. Here is the thing she thinks about, some evenings, watching the light go down over a town that never once suspected her. The smallest person in that room, the one they asked to refill the coffee, the one whose name they couldn't be bothered to keep, the one they put on a stage to laugh at, was the only person in the whole building who could read the whole room. Not because she was the smartest, because she was the only one nobody was watching, and being unwatched had taught her, for 9 long years, how to watch everything. They patronized the timid new hire, right up until she named the thing no one else could see. If someone underestimated you today, if someone looked right past you and never thought to look closer, tell me where you're watching from. I want to see how far this one travels.